What is de-extinction?
So de-extinction is the next stage where we don't have any of the same species and we don't have any close analogs. Then the idea is, well, can we use DNA and genetic engineering to bring back things which are extinct? So things like the woolly mammoth or giant sloths or like Protodon, all these other kind of, or thylacines, for instance, things which have no close analog and which are used to be banned but are now totally extinct. There are potential ways to do this. Colossal Biosciences have been in the news recently with their claims for de-extinction, which is an incredible, what's the right word? It's an incredible breakthrough, but it's not exactly what their publicity is saying. It's an incredible achievement, but they're not really dire wolves, but they are kind of on the path to being there. It's showing us that it's technically possible, but it's not all the way there yet. And I think we need to be very careful about the ethics of this kind of work, the costs that it takes to do it, whether that be better placed in conserving some of the surviving megafauna or mesofauna that are in real trouble today. Yes, we can think about de-extincting the dire wolf, but we still have Ethiopian wolves, which are in a lot of problems. We have red wolves that are having huge problems, painted dogs. All these dog species are in, dire straits, essentially.
And how far into the future could it be possible to de-extinct things like the woolly mammoth? And what are the benefits of actually doing that for the ecosystem or for tourism?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I would say that you're talking, decades into the future, century into the future. But with the way things have moved with Colossal and the rate of research acceleration, I'm not so certain of that anymore. I think the idea with kind of mammoth de-extinction, if they're going to take the same route as they've done with the dire wolf, so what they did there is we have the genome for the woolly mammoth as we have for quite a few of the extinct megafauna. And so you take the genome of your extinct animal, you compare it to its nearest living relative, or a close living relative. So with dire wolves, it was gray wolves. With woolly mammoths, it will be Asian elephants. We look for where there are differences. Where are the regions of the genome that tell the cell to be a woolly mammoth rather than to be an Asian elephant? And then you have to engineer those changes into a cell line. Then you have to introduce that cell line into an embryo, carry that embryo to term, and then you have to have a live birth. So, I mean, there are many complex and demanding stages along the way. We've seen that some of those steps can be done successfully for dire wolves, like Colossal have done. But I think technically it's more difficult with mammoths because Asian elephants are a much more difficult species to work with. They themselves are not doing so great. They're endangered under a lot of pressure. They don't do all that well in captivity. They're social, intelligent creatures. They don't like to be kind of left on their own in enriched environments. So I think doing lab work on them would be ethically dubious at best. We've never even done in vitro fertilization on elephants because their each cycle and 24-month gestation period is not conducive to tinkering. It's very difficult to get an Asian elephant to produce another Asian elephant, let alone the woolly mammoth. These aren't trivial problems. Assuming that even that all that was done, we reduce, obviously would have to not just be one woolly mammoth, it'd have to be a whole small population of them. Because again, we know that they were social, like elephants are. They had their own kind of social society, I guess. They had their own basics of culture.
Yeah.
If we even get to that stage, then I think it would be difficult to argue that they should be let loose. Even taking captive populations of animals and reintroducing them back to the areas they've been taken from are fraught and complex because captivity changes animals. They lose their kind of wild instincts. They become sort of semi-domesticated. I mean, it's the first step is to isolate them and get them used to humans. So that is a problem. If we got through all these problems and we ended up with a population of modified elephants that had mammoth genes, then the benefits of relocating them to areas where mammoths were found would be to restore some of that ecosystem. So when mammoths were around, there was a whole kind of Eurasia and North America that were a kind of steppe grassland environment. That's how these mammoths were able to live. They were able to eat these really nutritious grasses, and they themselves were keeping trees in check. They were manuring the land, keeping it fertile. And the whole ecosystem basically ran on the kind of downstream effects of having megafauna on them. And then as soon as these guys go extinct, we have the loss of the mammoth steppe grassland, and it turns into the sort of timber taiga that we have today. So if we were to bring mammoths and other megafauna back to this region, hopefully, fingers crossed, it would change the nature of the land itself and turn it back into a productive grassland, which supports a lot more biomass than timber and taiga. And this is the approach that Park, which is another kind of rewilding area that's been taking. So it's in Chersky, I think, in far northern Siberia, run by Sergei Zimov. They've taken species like camels, bison, muskox to this region of Siberia, horses, where they've not been found for 10,000 years, and let them loose to see what happens. And they saw that exactly what was predicted did happen, that these animals manured the land, they kind of broke it up and allowed a different community of flora to flourish, a much more productive kind of grassland type ecosystem where there'd only been tundra taiga before.
Yeah. I think places like Siberia are the best kind of test run because the population is so sparse. But I was just wondering, in terms of reintroduction, not just of extinct megafauna, but also of megafauna we still have today, in high population areas like Western Europe and the UK, is there actually enough space for them to be reintroduced effectively?
I would say yes. Certainly, if we go back to your previous point, Siberia and large parts of Alaska and northern Eurasia, they're sparsely populated, but they're not empty. I mean, people live there. You'd have to be a braver person to say, oh, by the way, we're going to be releasing some 4-ton mammoths in your vicinity. Just leave them alone to do anything. In the UK, parts of the UK are very densely populated and parts aren't. In the Highlands, where I live, where I'm from, north and west of Inverness, it's equivalent to Siberia in terms of population density. The problem is that it's not empty. There are large hunting estates, farmers, people generally antagonistic towards wildlife that might impact their way of earning a living. People have looked at, for instance, the habitat that Eurasian lynx like, and whether we have enough of it in the UK to support a reintroduced population. And there are definitely parts of the Highlands, parts of Northumberland, which would quite happily accept a viable population of lynx. But this kind of research just is about the habitat and it's not a human factor. So these are always the kind of key things to think about. It's all very well saying lynx would be happy to live here, but would the farmers that also live there be happy to live with the lynx?
Yeah.
That's almost a more important question than whether there's enough wood cover and prey for them.